Hello, friend. Today, I'm going to introduce you to 5 real-life experiments that are incredibly scary and have sparked massive controversy regarding ethics. I have arranged these stories in a specific order. We will start with experiments that seem harmless on the surface, and step by step, we will descend into absolute madness. Experiment number 1 is the Vipolm experiment. In 1945, in the city of Lund, Sweden, there was a mental institution called Vipolm Hospital. To the outside world, this looked like a place of care, but inside, it was a testing ground. This hospital specialized in treating patients with severe mental conditions. Most patients here had what is called an intellectual disability. To put it simply, while a normal person has an IQ between 85 and 115, these patients had an IQ below 70. They were innocent, trusting, and had almost no ability to think, reason, or defend themselves like ordinary people. One day, a group of researchers funded by the powerful sugar industry came to this hospital with a hidden agenda. They wanted to prove that sugar causes tooth decay, but they needed human subjects who couldn't say no. They chose these 660 helpless patients. The plan was brutal. Between their main meals, the researchers force-fed the patients massive amounts of chocolate and a specially designed sticky toffee. This wasn't normal candy. It was chemically engineered to be extra sticky, ensuring it would glue to the teeth for as long as possible. Imagine having a layer of sugar glued to your teeth, 24 hours a day for years. And the worst part? The doctors strictly gave orders that the patients were forbidden from brushing their teeth. The results were horrific. After a short period, every single patient developed severe tooth decay. About 50 of them had their teeth completely rotted down to the black stumps of their gums. This is a real photo of the patient's teeth. They lived in agonizing pain, unable to eat or sleep, but they couldn't even articulate their suffering to anyone. While the science was correct, bacteria in the mouth consume sugar to create acid that destroys enamel. The method was monstrous. Many critics later argued that these patients were treated as subhuman. The candy companies initially tried to hide the results because it hurt their business, but the truth eventually came out, leaving a permanent dark stain on Swedish medical history. Experiment number 2 is the resurrection experiment. In 1932, there was a doctor named Robert Cornish. He was a certified prodigy, having earned his doctorate at the incredible age of just 22. But genius often borders on madness. Cornish became obsessed with one single idea. He wanted to defeat death itself. He believed that death wasn't a final state, but merely a lack of coordination in the body. So, he designed a terrifying machine that looked like a giant teeter-totter. This is a real photo of that machine. He believed this device could mechanically restart blood circulation, acting as a substitute for a stopped heart. His method was gruesome. He would strap a fresh corpse onto the board. Then, he would inject the body with a mixture of epinephrine and anticoagulants to stimulate the heart and thin the blood. Finally, he would pump pure oxygen into the lungs and violently rock the board up and down. The idea was that the centrifugal force would physically force blood to circulate, tricking the brain into waking up. In 1933, he tested this method on human victims of heart attacks and drowning, but every attempt failed. Cornish realized the fatal flaw was time. These patients had been dead for too long before arriving at his lab. To prove his theory, he needed subjects that were fresh, so he turned his attention to dogs, where he could control exactly when they died and when they came back. He experimented on a series of fox terriers, naming them all Lazarus, and terrifyingly, it worked. Lazarus 4 and Lazarus V actually came back to life. But this wasn't a miracle, it was a horror movie. The revived dogs were not the same animals they were before. They were blind, severely brain damaged, and lived in a state of constant trembling terror. They would bark at nothing and attack anyone who came near. He hadn't brought back a pet, he had created a zombie. Cornish wasn't satisfied with dogs. He needed the ultimate prize, a human subject to secure his legacy. In 1947, he found Thomas McMonigal, a prisoner on San Quentin's death row, for the brutal murder of a young girl. He was scheduled to be executed in the gas chamber. In a twist that shocked the public, Thomas actually agreed to the experiment. He saw Cornish not as a madman, but as his savior. He signed a consent form hoping that after the execution, he would be resurrected and given a second chance at life. Cornish petitioned the authorities with a detailed plan. He would bring his machine directly inside the prison, ready to rock Thomas back to life the moment the gas chamber did its job. But the court realized a massive legal nightmare. If Cornish succeeded and Thomas woke up, he would be technically alive. Under the law of double jeopardy, the government cannot execute the same person twice for the same crime. Fearing that Cornish might unleash a brain-damaged zombie child murderer back onto the streets, the request was denied. Cornish's dark dream ended there. Experiment number 3 is treating mental illness. In 1907, there was a doctor named Dr. Henry Cotton who became the director of Trenton Psychiatric Hospital. To the public, he was a handsome, charming, and well-respected doctor. But behind closed doors, he held a bizarre medical theory. He believed that mental illness was not a problem of the brain, but was caused by hidden infections rotting inside the body. His cure was simple: find the infection and cut it out. To prove his theory, he started his treatment with the teeth. He didn't just extract decayed ones, he ordered the removal of all teeth. He believed that even healthy-looking teeth were secretly hiding pockets of infection at the roots, constantly dripping poison into the patient's stomach. So, he pulled thousands of teeth, leaving entire wards of patients unable to chew or speak clearly. But when the patients didn't get better, which was almost always the case, he refused to accept his theory was wrong. Instead, he concluded that the infection must be deeper inside the body. So, he escalated the surgery drastically. He began treating the human body like a machine, with broken parts. First, he removed tonsils and sinuses. When that failed to cure the insanity, he moved to the abdomen. He believed the colon was a sewer poisoning the brain, so he surgically removed large sections of patients' intestines. He didn't stop there. For men, he removed testicles. For women, he routinely removed ovaries and cervixes, claiming these reproductive organs were septic and needed to be destroyed to save the mind. Throughout the 1920s, he performed these procedures on thousands of people. He boasted to the media that he had achieved an incredible 85% cure rate, making him a medical celebrity. Eventually, a brave psychiatrist named Dr. Phyllis Greenacre investigated him and found the truth. The statistics were a lie. The death rate for his abdominal surgeries was actually over 30%. Patients were dying on the operating table from shock and peritonitis. Those who survived were not cured. They were left physically crippled, incontinent, and often more mentally unstable than before due to the trauma. In 1933, the story came to an unjust end. Despite the damning evidence in Greenacre's report, the medical board suppressed the findings to protect the hospital's reputation. Cotton was allowed to continue his work until he died of a heart attack. He was buried with full honors, hailed as a pioneer. It wasn't until decades later that history recognized his work for what it truly was, one of the most shameful and barbaric chapters in the history of American medicine. Experiment number 4 is the poison laboratory. To understand this horror, we must first look at the gulags. These were a brutal network of forced labor camps stretching across the frozen wastelands of Siberia. Millions of people were sent there. Political prisoners, intellectuals, and anyone considered an enemy of the state. They were starved, beaten, and worked to death in sub-zero temperatures. But for a select few, there was a fate worse than the cold. They were pulled from the camps and sent to a secret facility known as Laboratory 12, located right inside the headquarters of the secret police. Its mission was chilling: to invent the perfect weapon, a poison that was tasteless, odorless, and completely undetectable during an autopsy. The head biochemist, Grigory Myronovsky, treated these prisoners like disposable biological material. He didn't force the poison down their throats. He deceived them. He brought them into a clinical room, offering them medication for their health or a warm meal to comfort them. But in reality, every pill, every drink, and every loaf of bread was laced with deadly toxins like mustard gas, ricin, and digitoxin. Myronovsky would then stand behind the glass, watching coldly as the poisons took effect. He took detailed notes while his victims suffered in agony. Some vomited uncontrollably. Others were paralyzed, silently gasping for air as their lungs shut down. He viewed their dying moments not as a tragedy, but as data. After years of torture, he finally achieved his goal: a substance called C2. It was the ultimate invisible killer. When a prisoner consumed C2, the reaction was haunting. They didn't scream. Instead, they became unnaturally calm and silent. Witnesses reported that the victims' physical stature would actually shrink slightly as every muscle in their body contracted in unison. Within 15 minutes, they were dead. And the most terrifying part? An autopsy would show nothing but simple heart failure. These poisons weren't just for experiments, they were rehearsals for reality. The most famous proof came in 1978. Georgy Markov, a dissident writer, was walking across the Waterloo Bridge in London when he felt a sharp sting in his thigh. He turned to see a stranger picking up an umbrella. Markov thought nothing of it, but 4 days later, he was dead. Doctors found a tiny platinum pellet, smaller than a pinhead, embedded in his leg. It was filled with ricin, a sophisticated assassination technique straight out of Laboratory 12. The lab may be gone, but its legacy remains. As recently as 2018, the nerve agent Novichok was used to poison Sergei Skripal, proving that the dark knowledge created in those secret rooms is still very much alive today. Finally, experiment number 5, Nazino Island. This is the most horrific story of them all, a descent into madness. In 1933, the Soviet prisons were overflowing with petty criminals and people who simply lacked proper identification papers. The government came up with a brutal solution: dump them in the middle of nowhere to set up a special settlement. They chose Nazino Island, a tiny swampy strip of land in the middle of a freezing river in Siberia. They dumped 6,700 prisoners there. They left them with no tools, no shelter, and no clothes to protect them from the harsh Siberian elements. The only food provided was raw flour, dumped right onto the muddy shore. The prisoners had no way to bake bread. Desperate, they tried mixing the flour with dirty river water, eating the paste straight from their hats or shoes. This caused severe dysentery immediately. Within days, people were dying by the hundreds from exposure and disease. But then, the hunger took over. Violent gangs formed to hoard the little food available. When the flour ran out, the island descended into absolute nightmare. The prisoners began hunting each other. It became a cannibal island. Guards reported seeing people with flesh cut from their calves while they were still alive. It was a scene of total inhumanity. In just a few weeks, out of 6,700 people, over 4,000 were dead. It was an experiment in survival that turned into a massacre, proving how quickly civilization can collapse when humans are pushed to the brink. Okay, those are the 5 true stories of these real-life experiments. Since this is the very first video on this channel, your support means the absolute world to me. If these stories gave you chills, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. And let me know in the comments, which experiment do you think was the most evil? I'll be reading your thoughts. Bye for now.